the 31st of October 1517, a man with a hammer brought Rome to its knees and split a religion in two. His name was Martin Luther, and he used his hammer to disapprove of what he saw as the distorted teachings of medieval priests by nailing a list of 95 theses to the door of a cathedral. And among the central tenets that he protested was what had come to be called indulgences, the attainment of personal atonement by means of a monetary payment to a priest or a bishop or a pope. The idea that one could persuade God to provide forgiveness in exchange for money, that bribery is not only permitted but part of the system of ritual life, seemed to so many to be the profanest perversion of faith and the foulest abuse of spiritual power. It made penitence transactional and grace conditional on capital, with the poor burdened not only by want, but the inability to rid themselves of sin. One Dominican monk, Johann Tetzel, became notorious for transforming forgiveness into a business and commercializing clemency. A tale is told of one noble, Hans von Eyck, who approached him and asked to purchase a letter of indulgence that would pardon him for a sin with one unusual stipulation. The sin, he said, had not yet been committed. But not being one to question the motives of his clients, Tetzel sold him the preventative letter of indulgence. Moments later, the noble raided Tetzel's property, and when the monk threatened him with purgatory, the noble showed him the letter of clemency and said that he had already been forgiven. And to this day, one of the coffers which von Eyck raided sits on display in Brandenburg as a testament to the depravity which led Luther to trigger the Reformation. And though Martin Luther was no friend of ours, he was an appalling anti-Semite who published one book literally called On the Jews and Their Lies. But his protestations against a kind of divine bribery do seem true to our tradition too. In almost every age, our prophets strenuously complained about those who replaced authenticity and earnest apology with cold ritual and magical liturgy. Our teachings see sin as requiring contrition and confession and sincerity, rather than making amends through a simple standardized fee, which brings us to the new book that we started this morning, Sefer Vayikra, and its almost obsessional focus on sacrificial rites. We read of burnt offerings, of peace and meal offerings, of guilt and sin offerings. We read the details of slaughtered bulls and birds and sprinkled blood, how sheep innards and cow livers would flood the temple, how priests could eat some of the meat and bake cakes made from wheat, flour, and oil, all seasoned with salt. And this is our question: is this ritual system not simply an elaborate form of divine bribery where sins get forgiven for a fee of meat or wheat, and our priests offer clemency as a form of commercial currency? How are we to see the prescribed sacrifices and rites of our temple as noble, or having nothing in common with the odious medieval indulgent behavior that strikes us as so depraved? And as this morning we had a special siyum after Musaf, I only share one answer with you today, and it is in the name of the Parisian thinker and leader and teacher, Rabbi Eliyahu Monk. And he begins his reflections on Leviticus by drawing an emphatic line in the sand and painting our practices as radically different to the pagan sacrificial systems of the ancient Near East, where tribal gods were appeased or entreated or pleased through gifts of meat and blood and money. If we pay close attention, Rabbi Monk notes, and read Vayikra slowly, this truth is plain for all to see. He says there are four kinds of sacrifice in Jewish life: the Ola, or burnt offering, the Shlamim, or peace offering, the Asham, or guilt offering, and the Chatat, or sin offering. We've got the Ola, the Shlamim, the Asham, and the Chatat. And which one of these is brought by a murderer? None of them are brought by a murderer. Which one is brought by a thief? None is brought by a thief. Which one is brought by somebody who deliberately violates Shabbat or deliberately eats chametz, or a judge who is convicted of corruption, or a king or a priest found guilty of abusing their power? And the answer to all of the above is none. In each of these instances and more, those who deliberately commit sins or are convicted of criminal conduct are taken before a court of law to face the consequences of their failures. Our sacrificial system is explicitly tailored for a very specific set of sins or circumstances. Peace offerings are not brought to appease God or appeal to Him for help. They express gratitude for past rescues or the annual communal festivities. Sin and guilt offerings are not brought to atone for clear cut, premeditated crimes or deliberate delinquency. They are brought only in the wake of questionable cases, unintentional errors, or unknowing offenses, and burnt offerings are brought to atone only for instances of improper thoughts or a failure to perform acts mandated by the court. In the words of the medieval master of Jewish philosophy, Rabbi Yitzchak Arama, sacrifices in the Jewish tradition are offered in only one of two moods: either bli avon, without sin, and these are the celebration sacrifices, or shelo yadu ba'asot hara, by those who didn't realize the illegality of their behavior, those who commit unintentional or negligent sins. So for Rabbi Monk, our korbanot could not be more distinct from medieval indulgences. Our sacrifices do not function as a kind of commercialized divine bribery that promises blanket amnesty for any crime. They are not a flagrant or brazen attempt to ritually attain atonement in place of confession or contrition or shame. Exoneration in Jewish law is found either before the court or in offers of authentic apology. Our sacrificial service is subtle and does not seek to evade justice or place personal and civic moral responsibility. It is designed to guide us toward two pivotal truths. First, the expression of gratitude is vital, and second, inattention can be fatal for a fragile society. Sin and guilt and burnt offerings are required not to absolve anyone of calculated crimes, but to remind us that even unintentional, inadvertent errors ought to be avoided through a collective, reflective, ritual practice intended to deepen deliberation, concentration, and awareness. And peace offerings are brought not to placate God or beg heaven for favors, but to ensure that we never take good fortune or each other for granted. We are bound to turn to God to recognize the good in our lives, for it will help us thrive and inspire us to share our gifts and give our time to others. Now, of course, the sacrificial system can be abused and was many times over the course of our national history. Isaiah and Jeremiah and Hosea and our sages all rail against the misapplication of sacred rites and the callous disregard for the spiritual lives of citizens under the dominion of cruel kings and crooked priests. As Samuel said to King Saul, "Hachafetz laHashem ba'olot u'tzvachim," does God desire burnt offerings, kishmoa b'kol Hashem, more than He wants you to hear God's voice? Korbanot were intended to attune us to heaven, not to absolve us of sin. They were intended to remind us of our mission, not to release us of responsibility. And in an age without the temple, it is prayer that takes the place of sacrificial ritual. Prayer is our opportunity to express our appreciation for all that we have and deepen our attention toward all that we seek. And every single week in Shul, John Kramer and Elliot Goldovsky lead a discussion called Cycling with the Siddur, where they lead a group through the teachings of a scholar explaining what exactly our prayers mean. For the past 8 years, they have gone cover to cover through the thought of one scholar, and now in the weeks ahead, they will be turning to the seminal, pivotal, original, and brilliant work called Olam HaTfilot, the World of Prayer, written by none other than Rabbi Eliyahu Monk himself, which explains the shape of our liturgy, the meaning beneath our liturgy, and the effect that our liturgy seeks to have on all of us. And on behalf of the entire community, we all wish Mazal Tov to John and Elliot and the whole group of Cycling with the Sitter for this outstanding achievement. And we wish them continued success in their next endeavor, to which everyone listening is invited to join as well. May our prayers all be heard on high. And equally important, may they attune our minds to the kind of world that heaven wishes to see and inspire us to fulfill our mission, to bring it to be. I wish you all a Shavua Tov.